Vince McMahon appreciated what I'm going to call the creative genius of Chris Jericho. He is a creative genius. How many times has he changed his whole routine and he's come back fresh almost every single time?
Let's see. Jericho recently discussed his relationship with Vince McMahon, saying, quote, "Not everything can be great, but as far as the wrestling business goes, I learned a lot about the actual wrestling side from him," end quote. Teddy, you've talked about Vince in the past. We're not trying to put him on a pedestal by any means, but to you, Vince McMahon was pretty much the same thing, was he not?
Yeah, basically I learned everything. I mean, really what this business is all about. I learned that from being able to be working close with him. And like I said, a lot of the stuff that I did, Vince McMahon wrote. The thing with me and Undertaker where he kidnapped me. Well, Vince was a part of that. He was part of the stuff when I was doing the White Boy Challenge. He wrote some of that stuff. I think when I went out and insulted Jerry Lawler in Memphis, Vince wrote that line. So he helped me out a lot. And like I said, I learned a lot. I understood that this is a business and there's a time to play and there's a time to stay business.
Yep. Bill, does it surprise you that Jericho and McMahon pretty much got along? Because I've always heard that they pretty much if Chris didn't agree, he could go to Vince and say something and they could talk it through. So it doesn't surprise me to know that he does feel that way about Vince.
Yeah, I saw him backstage with Vince many, many times, and they were having great, I don't know what they were talking about, but they always were bouncing ideas and suggestions off each other. Vince McMahon appreciated what I'm going to call the creative genius of Chris Jericho. He is a creative genius. How many times has he changed his whole routine and he's come back fresh almost every single time? Right, Daddy?
Hi, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always thought that, Teddy. You've always said this too, that he has the ability to reinvent himself. It doesn't matter if he ends up on his back at the end of a match with the 3 count. He'll get right back up and get every bit of his heat right back.
He's a marketer.
You can't kill him. You can't bury him. He knows how to avoid all that.
Yep.
Right. He's a marketer. He knows back in the magazine days, he'd pose for me for 2 days if I needed him to, because he knew it was not just good for him, but good for the whole company with WCW back then. And then he'd say to me, "Hey, take some pictures of this guy. He's a team player."
Yes,
and
right.
That's what he brought to Vince McMahon, even when he was younger. I'm talking about Jericho, not McMahon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, he brought that to AEW when he signed on for AEW when they first started, because without Jericho, you didn't have that big anchor name in the company, except for John Moxley. He was also signed on too. But at the time, really, Chris Jericho was the name that signed with AEW that made the difference.
Kenny Omega as well.
Yeah, for those who knew who Kenny Omega was. Now, I'll be honest, when it came to that startup, I didn't have a clue who Kenny was. Now, I found out later because I got interested and wanted to find out more about him. But at that time, Jericho was the name I knew. And I was like, okay, this could be interesting.
You think you know all the wrestling stories? There's more you haven't heard yet. Join us on Backstage Pass.